My name is Kevin Moriarty, and welcome to Waterline Writers. We have events here in this beautiful space for writers and those who love the written word. We gather here to hear writers reading their original creative work from all styles and all genres. If you're a writer, you can submit your published or not yet published work. You can find instructions on our website at waterlinewriters.org. We have a special call for our April show to coincide with the Water Street show that's going to be up in April. And their theme for the Water Street art show is Climate Crisis Solutions. So we're having a special call for writing regarding that topic. And there is more information about that in your program if you're interested. In addition to our featured writers, we will have an open mic tonight after our main event. There's a 5-minute limit. If you did not get a chance to sign up for the open mic when you came in, the sign-up sheet's on the desk in the corner over there, and you can sign up during the break if you'd like to read. We suggested a $5 donation at the door, and we do appreciate your generosity. The proceeds go to the writers. If there's stuff left over, it goes to Water Street Studios, and we save a little for some special projects that we're cooking up. And if you buy a book tonight from one of our authors, we'll give you your $5 back. Is that a deal or what? Just a heads up, we are recording tonight's event. First time with 2 cameras. We're getting pretty fancy here. We're going real Hollywood, huh? And it's going to be broadcast on BATV, which is our local Batavia TV station. But you can also see it online. They stream it on the internet too. And you can check our website for the show times. Once they tell us, we'll tell you. Now we have a young lady named Trish Cradell. She's with the Chicago area. She is the Chicago area program director for Take My Word For It. And she's going to tell us about something unusual, actual paying job opportunities for writers. Could you believe it? Trish, come on up.
So I know that's exciting, right? Paying opportunities. So my name is Trish Cradell with Take My Word For It. Take My Word For It is a creative writing program for children. So for children grades 3 through 5. It started in 2009 in San Francisco area. Since then it's grown to Northern Virginia and Boston, and now the program is coming here to Chicago. So it's a creative writing program. Our goal is to share our passion with children for creative writing and to really teach them to harness their creativity, different literary elements in a theme-based class. Some of the classes are mystery classes or scavenger hunt classes. We've got lots of different types of classes, and they're held after school in an after-school enrichment type opportunity or through a community-based opportunity. So we're actually going to have a class here at Water Street Studios for children starting in January. So again, it's for grades 3 through 5. So my job is to get these programs up and running in the area. And now I'm looking for authors, writers, anyone who is interested to share their passion to teach these classes. So I'll have more information, and I'm going to be sitting over here at the break. So if any of you are interested in sharing your passion and your creativity and your writing with youth, I would love to talk to you a little bit more about it. So again, it's called Take My Word For It, and my name is Trish. So thanks.
Hi, my name is Ann Vague, and I want to welcome all of you to Waterline Writers. It's exciting to see everybody here. Without further ado, we're going to get right to our first writer. Our first writer is John K. Manis, and John graduated from Knox College in 1974. After 4 years in educational publishing, he worked in magazines from 1980 until 2001. For 14 years as editor-in-chief of Consumer Digest magazine. Since 2001, he has earned his living as a writer and freelance editor. Kirkus says his first novel, Dialogues of a Crime, is one of the best indie books of 2013. And the San Francisco Book Review called it a 5-star novel. Its free Kindle promotion resulted in 26,468 downloads, 6,000 of which paid anyway. So I think we all want to know his secret on that. John Manis, please come on up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Kirkus called the book, I'll have to read it because I'm not remembering. You'd think I had this imprinted on my brain, but I don't. A character-driven crime novel ruled by complex men facing the past. So I'm going to introduce you to the two men they're referring to in that. I won't give you much background on it because it'd be too hard to, but the chapter I'm going to read is very late in the book. It follows one character, Michael Politz, has just been deposed by a state's attorney as part of an investigation of two murders that occurred 22 years earlier. The other character you'll meet, Detective Larry Klinger, is pursuing that cold case, which he hopes will lead through Politz to a mob boss who is like a second father to Politz. That's all the background I'm going to give you. You'll have to read the book to figure it out otherwise. All right. Shortly before noon, 3 days after the deposition with Whitaker, the state's attorney, the receptionist at Michael's advertising agency buzzed his office to announce a visitor. Michael was perplexed at first, but by the time he reached the lobby, he remembered who Larry was. He found Klinger rocking on his heels in front of one of the two wall-mounted television screens the company had installed to continuously run its own commercials. The detective gazed appraisingly at a Sears ad, his lips pursed. He looked as though he was studying a work of art that he wasn't sure he understood. He glanced over his shoulder and grinned as Michael approached. "You do this?" he asked, thrusting a stubby thumb at the screen. "No," Michael answered. Klinger extended his hand. "You feel like some lunch?" "Why not?" Michael answered. He turned to the receptionist to tell her he'd be back in about an hour, then led the way out to the elevators. "Nice offices," Klinger said. "Yeah," Michael agreed warily. They boarded an empty elevator. "You want to know what a nice guy I am?" Klinger asked, smiling. "I didn't identify myself when I asked for you. Just told that little doll I was Larry." Michael laughed. "Well, I guess I appreciate that," he chuckled, "but they'd probably find it glamorous if they thought I had trouble with the police." "Ignorance is bliss," Klinger replied. "Where's a good place to eat?" "I like a Chinese joint around the corner," Michael answered as they left the elevator. "It's quick and good. That okay with you?" Sure. I eat anything." As they stepped into the May sunshine, Klinger stretched luxuriantly, his arms wide. "My God, what a fine day," he announced, breathing deeply. Michael nodded. "We get so few like this in Chicago," Klinger added. He was happy, and he gestured for Michael to lead the way. They walked to the restaurant without speaking. It was a small, noisy, unassuming place. Klinger was pleased. He never felt entirely at ease in upscale restaurants and said so. Michael smiled as they sat in the booth and placed their orders. He sipped water and waited while Klinger looked around and shifted his bulk comfortably into the corner of the padded vinyl bench. The waiter brought the first part of their order. "Boy, you weren't kidding about the quick part," Klinger beamed. Michael smiled and nodded. "You know," Klinger said, "you really surprised me the other day." "How's that?" Michael asked. He picked up an egg roll and dipped in the sauce, pushed it over to Klinger. "When you confirmed Bobby Andrews' claims about what you said, anyone else would have said he couldn't remember." "I did remember," Michael answered. "Actually, I was more embarrassed than anything else." Klinger took a few bites. He said, "That's strong food and it's great." Finally, he composed himself and said, "Why do you say you were embarrassed?" With such sophomoric bravado, it reminded me of what a dumb kid I was. "Hey, I like that phrase," Klinger said. "Sophomoric bravado. I'll have to remember that one. I should write it down." He smiled. "You have a good memory?" "I'm notorious for it," Michael answered. "Yeah, me too. Of course, most detectives have good memories." Michael replied, "I'd assume it's necessary for the job." "It helps," Klinger said. He loosened his tie. "But you know, most people get serious amnesia when it comes to, how should I put it, potentially incriminating conversations or events. Your answers are kind of unusual. You follow me?" Michael could see how Klinger's conversational tics get on a person's nerves. He wondered if it was intentional. He shrugged. "Why lie?" "That's just the point," Klinger said joyfully. "There's a lot of good reasons to lie." He grinned. "And when I asked you out just now, I was almost sure you'd say not without your attorney." Michael shrugged again. He considered it. "You know," Klinger continued, "I'll let you in on something. Just about everyone I interview, and I mean practically everyone, tries to lie to me. And you wouldn't believe how stupid most of the lies are. But in this case, it wouldn't have been a stupid lie. It would have been a believable lie. That's, you have what they call plausible deniability back when I was a kid. He paused, his lips still drawn back in a wide smile as he later placed bowls of soup on the table. That's why you're such a puzzler to me, he said with immense pleasure. I'm glad to be entertaining, Detective Klinger. Hey, call me Larry, Klinger said affably. He slurped some soup. Boy, that's good, he announced. He slurped some more, then wiped his lips. See, Mike, he said with confidential familiarity, most people don't realize that most of the work cops do is just plain tedious. I mean 90% of the job. You just keep grinding away. It ain't like the TV shows. Lots of times you're just packing some moron off to prison. Everything's obvious and you just make sure you do everything legal so some judge doesn't let the bad guy walk. He finished his soup and smacked his lips with satisfaction. But when things are more complex, which is hardly ever the case, then you gotta grind away until you get it together. A little piece here, a little piece there, until you get the whole picture. You follow? Michael nodded, wondering where Klinger was headed. Let me give you an example, Klinger said. One of the best cops I ever knew was a guy who worked in accident investigations, of all things. That ain't exactly the glamour division of the department. A few years ago, we had a hit and run down on Western Avenue. A couple kids were crossing the street like at 9 at night, and a car hit them and drove off. They were killed. So now it's a homicide, so I'm there. We had a couple of witnesses, but they didn't know what kind of car it was, what color it was, whether the driver had hit the hooks, which he had from the skid marks. We didn't even all agree on which direction it was going when it hit the kids, even though we could figure that out from the street. Let me tell you, juries love eyewitnesses, but a lot of times they aren't too helpful. They think they saw something, but they really didn't. Excuse me. So this guy from Major Accidents gets a flashlight and spends I don't know how long crawling around the street, collecting all these little pieces of glass and plastic. He had the idea that it was a side mirror from the car that hit the kids. So he takes this bag full of plastic and glass back to the station and sits at a table with a roll of Scotch tape. And for hours, he tries to fit these little tiny busted up pieces together again. And you know what? It was the side mirror from the car. We finally ID'd the make and model and found the driver and prosecuted him. All because that cop had the patience to put that mirror back together. He lifted a huge forkful of food into his mouth and looked up expectantly. Sounds like admirable dedication, Mike finally offered. I guess, Klinger said dismissively. He sounded disappointed. Tell me, way back then, were you a draft dodger? From his tone, Michael didn't think he was serious with the pejorative. He answered, you mean during Vietnam? No, I was pretty apolitical. Once I went to prison, it was a moot point anyway. Klinger laughed merrily, his stomach jiggling against the table. You never know, he said. By 1972, the Army might have taken anyone who was willing to go. How about you, Michael asked. Oh, I served. Back in the 60s. Lots of cops my age were in the service then. Stationed in Vietnam, too. You see any action? As a matter of fact, I had the dubious privilege of participating in the first open engagement with the NVA. Michael looked up. He said, you were in Nha Drang? Klinger's mouth dropped open. How in the hell do you know that? Michael shrugged. The detective exclaimed with wonder, my God, no one knows about that fight. How in the world? You couldn't have been 10. So I was 13, but that's not now how I know about it, Michael answered. I read a lot. Now I'm impressed, Klinger beamed. So you're a regular Army, Michael said, smiling and infected by Klinger's enthusiasm. Were you with the unit that got overrun or the one that held a solid perimeter? My God, Klinger bellowed again. You really do know about it. He shook his head, laughing and awestruck. I was with the discipline battalion, he answered at length. Thank God. He shook his head again. You amaze me, Mike. Yeah. Well, like I say, I read a lot. If I recall correctly, Nha Drang is what convinced the North Vietnamese that American air power would make any pitched battles a losing proposition. Who knows, Klinger said happily. I was just a grunt. I got to come home after that. Were you wounded? Yes, sir, Klinger bellowed. Shot in the ass. He laughed loudly, drawing glances from other diners. Want to see the scar? No? For some reason, nobody ever does. He kept chuckling as they divided the bill and started to leave. Jesus, he said, still abashed. What a memory. You're the first person I ever met who knew the name of that valley. Michael followed him back out onto the street. Tell me something, Larry. Do you think about it much? Have nightmares? Anything like that? Not really. Never did, to tell the truth. I haven't even dreamed about it for years, Klinger replied. I rarely think about it now. They walked back toward Michael's building. Well, that's sort of how I feel about my little episode in prison, Michael said. I don't even want to think about it. Point taken, kiddo, Klinger answered with a smile. Point taken. Michael stopped near the building entrance and looked at the detective. Why are you so concerned about a couple of really rotten guys who got killed more than 20 years ago? Why? Klinger asked, with his forehead wrinkled by his eyebrows. You may not believe this, Mike, but I don't think anyone should get away with murder. You follow me? He met Mike's gaze soberly. Murder's wrong, he said. Michael nodded without breaking eye contact and smiled. He turned to go back to work. As he reached for the door, Klinger called after him. Hey, Mike! Michael turned back. Nice restaurant, Klinger said. Thank you all.
Thank you, John. That was John Manis, reading from Dialogues of a Crime, and that really gives you only a tiny idea of what the novel is like. I've read it, it's right over there. It's a really powerful novel. I really recommend it. And our next author, Joan Colby, has published widely in journals such as Poetry, Atlanta Review, and South Dakota Review. And her awards include 2 Illinois Arts Council Literary Awards and IAC Fellowship. One of her poems won the 2014 Atlanta Review International Poetry Contest. She's published 14 books, including Selected Poems, which was the winner of the 2013 Future Cycle Press Prize, Properties of Matter, Aldrich Press, Kelsey Books, Bittersweet, Main Street Rag Press, and The Wingback Chair, Future Cycle Press. Glass Lyre Press will publish Ribcage in 2015. Colby is also Associate Editor of Kentucky Review and Future Cycle Press, Editor of Illinois Racing News, and lives on a small horse farm. Last week, I saw that she posted on Facebook that it was a good week because the Atlantic Review arrived with her winning poem, plus 3 of her Clio poems, plus White Stag arrived with 2 more poems. So hopefully reading at Waterline Writers will cap out her week. Joan Colby.
Was inspired really by the legend of Medusa, and as you may remember, Medusa was a Gorgon, and if you looked on Medusa's face, you would be turned to stone. And so this poem is enchantments about what that experience might be like. Changing into stone is never swift, but operates according to the slow law of petrification. The process of replacing sentience with calcification is happening all the while beneath your notice. Changing into the beast is terrible. Suddenly, speech is absent, the way of looking lowered, until hunger and lust assume dimensions more intense, but less interesting. The pupils of your eyes are oblongs or slits. The hair on your neck rises. Your pelt fits loosely over the musculature, and the long preambles of love are meaningless. And the second poem that I would like to read is called Cygnus, which is about swans, and it also refers to the myth of Leda and the swan. On earth a bevy, in flight a wedge. In the wild swans, 11 banished brothers are transformed to infect the skies with a presence, like the 5 flying swans that symbolize the Nordic countries. Whoever kills a swan will perish. And what of those killed by swans, like the kayaker who came too close to the nesting place, battered, overturned, and drowned? Or Leda, whose rape became a harbinger of erotic art, depictions by the great masters of that strange copulation vanished at the hands of moralists. In a local park, a plump woman of middle years is being pursued by an angry black-masked cob with a terrifying 10-foot wingspread. She totters past on high heels, wide-eyed, as Leda must have been. And the next poem is called Bad Signs, which also was inspired by some superstitions that are supposed to indicate misfortune, bad signs. A white pigeon nests upon your chimney. A black moth flies into your house. A nightjar cries its misfortune into a shattering mirror. A nun enters your field of vision. You walk in her shadow. You gather snowdrops, sing at table. The sparrow lacks sympathy. It is condemned by God to hop in invisible hobbles. You have caged innumerable sparrows. Wed your love on Thursday. You wander, until you come to a dead body, the worst omen of all. It sucks you down into its grinning mouth, through the windows of its eyes, into its bones. And now, 3 knocks at the door. A mole tunnels under the wash house. A dog howls, and a death watch beetle taps in the wood, calling to its kind. The next poem I'd like to read, these 2 poems are sort of related. This poem is called Everything is Tenuous. Find it here. Everything is tenuous. Here are the trees of morning, where birds echo the songs of dinosaurs, and stones speak a language that water running over their tongues invents. The world won't pause while you slumber. The leaves mulch underfoot, the spiderwebs struck down so carelessly, the tiny mites you soap from your hands. Rumors abound in the hollyhocks. You are simply the minister of your garden. Each green thing has its own dogma, of which you know almost nothing. And the next poem, which is sort of associated with that, is called The Nature of Freedom. An open door is terrifying, hauls the eye to blue distances, roads narrowing like arrowheads, a sky soaring with birds of prey. A closed door cannot be borne. The heart knocks on it, beats a key of breath into shape, fits it as one body fits another. The door slides open, lovers fall apart, everything spreads amorphous, uncontained. Thus, strategy of a window, before it a table, a book face down, iris in a glass vase, outside a dead garden, bent rake, an elm dressed in rain. The next poem is called The Zohar, and the Zohar is a stone that is formed in the intestines of a horse if it ingests sand, and it, like a pearl in an oyster, continually forms, and some of them get quite large and will necessitate surgery eventually. And so this is about a Zohar. Famous stone beloved by herbalists, a universal antidote. A thief accepted poison to test its efficacy and died in great distress. Still, its powers extolled by alchemists and magicians, pulsing with the lure of faith. Under glass on a shelf in the vet sanctuary, the largest one he has extracted, formed in a horse's cecum in concentric mineral rings, the way a pearl surrounds an irritant. The horse refused its hay, stomped, groaned, lay down. A difficult diagnosis, choke. The enterolith, large as a cannonball, rare, extraordinary. A visitor declares it disgusting, freakish marble of the bowel. The vet defends his prize, the body's curious device, like everything, magical. And the next poem is called Pumps, and it is what is called an abecedinarian, in that each line begins with the letter of an alphabet. And we were having a problem with our well pump when I wrote this poem. And I was also thinking about the pump of the heart. Someone that I love has a heart condition. And as I say, each line begins with a consecutive letter of the alphabet. Always a disaster if a pump breaks, its blue heart causing a loss of prime, loss of direction, the gist of everything reversing its principles, flowing back to the reservoir, generous or frugal, like any heart, its steady beat both hurtful and intolerant of disturbances of rhythm. The jolt that sparks, then kindles the sort of pulse incompatible with love. Pour into it the fluid of mercy. Transfusions such as these result in nothing if under the obdurate surface there is a paucity of will. The water table perhaps quenching its thirst deeper than you remembered. Desire rusting in the old stalled courses. You can try to disassemble all that undid your hopes. Pray the bad tempo vanishes, that at last you'll reach healing waters, cold, good as x-rays, showing no blockage. Now you are back in business, back in the zoo of the loving. So some poems are just fun to write. This poem is called Radish, and it's just a contemplation on the vegetable, the radish. Rose red, snow white duality. It might have been a radish that inspired such myths. A perfect belly of tartness, sharp, crisp, cool, and hot simultaneously, like an embarrassment, a word spoken you can't take back, or the crazy love affair you knew was going nowhere. Turret of tang, peasant in a red cap, not sweet, not bitter, but purely itself, fast grower, shirking dirt from its Kremlin, pushing like a birth. Smart as a slap, nothing bloody about it, brazen as a backside, jeering the salad from riddance to uproar. Take this, red fist, white flesh, taste this, polka dancer, papoose, full purse. This poem is called Barn Fire, and barn fires often start when hay that is moist just ignites itself. It isn't necessarily an electrical fire or anything like that. The hay can just generate heat to the point where it will ignite. Barn fire. Green, dense, moist, packed and stacked 10 high to fill the loft. A narrow aisle filters light lauded with dust. A yeasty smell, good enough to eat or kindle. How the heat begins to smolder, deep, deep within the wick of bale. A thin snake of smoke like the contrail of a high-flying jet echoing its sound breaks. Swallow nests, then the great beams catch and glow. That's how it starts. Not a cigarette discarded or a wire gnawed by rats. The provender ignites its own safekeeping. Its axioms of immolation bless the harvest with a baleful flame. Here's the rest of that story of storage, of keeping safe, of keeping everything inviolate. Each story is a myth in which someone discovers fire. And then it all begins. And let's see. This poem is called A World of Sadness, and it was actually written for a musical composition that inspired me to write the poem, and the title of the music was A World of Sadness. You will not be sad in this world, though all the music haunts hills garbed in fog, though lilies fade in their turquoise vases, The slow water passing languorously beneath the ancient wharf. A woman on a bench clasps her hands, the book unopened. The lost poem written by a slave whose tongue was severed for telling how it felt, this loneliness. Acknowledge the red knob of the closed door, the broken window where a child peers into a littered alley, the rags of dream you gather to knot about your throat. Renouncing sadness, that old bicycle whose wheels no longer revolve, the brakes that seize, pitching you into a pool of milk. Adorn yourself with the black silks of all the midnights spent weeping. It was not lost so much as safekeeping. The locket congealed with starshine, the opal rings of your governing planet, saturnine, ironic, denying the sadness that hoods the visible world. And the next poem is called Writing to the Dead. And it's about kind of the impossibility of things that we wish perhaps we had said to people when they were still living among us. At the wall, tuck letters between the stones, or set them afire to send smoke signals, a calligraphy of ash. Tie them to the legs of pigeons famed for homing. Let the eyelash of Providence sew them to the clouds. Inscribe scrolls for angels, stamp clay tablets with bird prints. Let the words rise in a wash of ink. Send emails into cyberspace to be kidnapped by demon mailers. If nothing else, stuff them into abandoned mailboxes that angle haphazardly into all weathers, undelivered of everything you sought to say and hesitated. And the final poem that I will read is the title poem of the book, which is Bittersweet. And bittersweet, of course, is a vine that clambers all over everything, and oftentimes we use the berries as winter decorations. A slate darkness where thought meets its executioner. You leave that house key in the mailbox. Where you are going, the roads diminish to gravel, then dirt, then ruts divided the way loss creates ridges of bad clay. Dregs of bad wine coat the words you shut your mouth upon. Sadness is sweeter than feeling nothing. Orange and red, the gaudy berries clash to display a wintry disdain. You airbrush the picture until your hands clasp, then grip, then loosen. The way the air catches a leaf and sets it down to be trodden. How the tongue senses one thing, then another, and loves them both, loves them anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. These are beautiful. I'm going to have to give radishes another chance, I guess. and someday I'm going to do an entire Waterline event just with the theme of food, because we've had several people who've read poems about food. Like I think last time Dory Becker read about a poem about a peach. That was, and like the radish, it was beautiful. I'm going to need a little help introducing our next writer. As I read earlier, our first writer, John Manis, was from Knox College, as was I. And I'm going to ask Mike O'Mary, one of my classmates from Knox, to come up. It's not always all about Knox, but they do have a really strong writing program, so we just can't help it. Mike O'Mary, I'm going to let you tell who you are and introduce David Berner.
Thanks, Ann. Thank you. Don't have to applaud me, I'm just introducing somebody. But I'm here because I'm proud to be the publisher of the next author. I'm not going to tell you everything about David because I think you've all got his bio, but you can read that he's a journalist, broadcaster, author, teaches at Columbia College. You can hear him on WBBM and WXRT. He's got 2 memoirs out, both have won prestigious awards. I'm fortunate enough to have worked with David this past summer to put out a new edition of Any Road Will Take You There, his second memoir. By the way, I've got both of them over here for sale during the break, if you happen to be interested. So 2 really good memoirs he's written. He does all kinds of other stuff. One of the things that I admire about David is that busy guy, right? If you read his bio, he does all kinds of stuff, but he makes time for writing, right? And I've always believed that, you know, the difference between making it as a writer and not making it is sitting down in front of a blank computer screen and just making yourself do it, you know, and there are a lot of writers in the world who have great ideas but just can't get it on paper, and David does that in all sorts of ways. The other couple of things I'm going to tell you real quick, little anecdote about David that you can find on his website. So he's a journalist, broadcaster. His roots in journalism go way back to his days as a paper boy delivering what's the Pittsburgh Press, right? He says he wasn't a very good paper boy journalist because instead of delivering the papers, he would stop and sit in the curb and read about the world instead of getting the papers delivered. But it was a start. And the other quick thing I'm going to mention is on December 3rd, David's going to be the guest of honor at a luncheon at the Union League in downtown Chicago. So if any of you happen to be downtown, it's a Wednesday, please think about joining us there. He's going to give a talk about road trips, midlife crises, and the journeys of fathers and sons, themes that are in a lot of his writing. And David was generous enough to offer he's going to give away 2 tickets tonight. So if during the break or later you want to come over and sign up, there's a catch. You have to sign up for my newsletter from Dream of Things, my publishing company, which is not too painful. But if you sign up for the newsletter, later on we'll at random pick somebody and get a hold of you by email, and you'll get 2 tickets to that luncheon. And if you can't make it, maybe you can find somebody else who would like to come, and you could pass those on to them. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming David Bernard.
Mike is fast becoming my best friend. Says such wonderful things about me. That anecdote he talked about with the newspaper is absolutely true, and I got shivers up my back when he said that because I got so many people on my paper route who said to me, "How come you're so late? The paper's supposed to be here an hour ago." Well, that's why, because I sat there and read usually the sports page, but I read something and read about some other things. I won't tell you a lot about me. Mike did that very well, and I thank him for that, and I loved listening to Joan and John. But I'll tell you a little bit about this piece that I'm going to read. It's from Any Road Will Take You There, which is the latest memoir. I took a 5,000-mile road trip with my 2 sons and my best friend that was sort of based on a trip that Jack Kerouac took in On the Road. It was inspired that way. I had been in a place in my life where I wasn't sure what was next, and I remember that book when I was a teenager. It meant a lot to me. And I read it again, which I hadn't read in decades. And I read it again and decided to take a little road trip, feeling it might be, give some redemptive power and give me a little sense of what I wanted to do next in my life. And I took my 2 kids along, and I took my best friend. And it turned into a journey that was unexpected. It was really metaphorically a journey about me being a father, and my relationship with my dad, and most importantly, his relationship with his father, my grandfather. The book starts out with a little bit of a secret about my family that I did not know. It's a photograph that's discovered. I'll let you read that if you buy the book, but there's a photograph that's discovered, and it really has me thinking about the whole idea of fatherhood. That's what the book is about. This part is about a part in the book where my sons and I are listening to music in the vehicle that we were driving in. And I was playing a lot of music that I liked and playing a few songs that they liked too, but they had been indoctrinated into my likes too. But it had me start to think about a moment I had with my younger son about music and the connections we made, and this is what this is about. Graham had seen 5 counselors since 7th grade. His mother and I even tried an art therapist to search for answers with paint and crayons and Elmer's glue. But things progressively worsened. It's not that he was a problem kid getting into trouble, antisocial, or violent. He was exactly the opposite: thoughtful, considerate, gentle. The paradox over Graham's grades began in the last year of elementary school, and like an insidious infection, spread into his middle and then high school classes, where his grades took a dive so deep that his mother and I were already pulling together the paperwork for summer school and the 5-year high school plan. He shined on tests, but homework was lost, forgotten, or willingly dismissed. But there were other concerns. He had been caught disregarding the truth, telling his mother and me he had done things and had been places he hadn't. And he had snatched money out of his mother's purse to pay off some debts to friends at school. His confessions revealed he had been buying Gatorade from the school's vending machine and extra hot dogs in the cafeteria. He was already a big kid, standing nearly 6 feet and weighing 250 pounds, and now he was getting bigger. There had been discussions with therapists about eating disorders, but frankly, the doctors, his counselors, his teacher, and his parents were all guessing. I started to refer to all of Graham's troubles as the noise in his head. It was the random racket, the crackling of the misplaced and misdirected electrical impulses, the dissonant symphonic sounds of a drunken wind orchestra. The noise was drowning out all the soul's quiet conversations, the soothing words of a mind trying to talk itself back into balance. But all around the turbulence, there was color, a dense pigment. Graham was not gray, beige, green, or yellow. Graham was purple, the combination of red hot and cool blue, but the delicate lighter shades of lavender, not that. It was deeper, more complicated hues of the crocus, the favorite color of Cleopatra, the color of robes worn by royalty and men of spiritual high rank, the color of the military medal given to those wounded in battle, the color of a Jimi Hendrix musical haze. The intricate combination of the color and the noise formed the center of Graham's complexity, a labyrinth no one had yet to navigate. Still, the simple part of the puzzle was that Graham was a likable guy. He was social and witty and sharp. He had sharp intellect and passion, especially for music. "Who's singing this song?" I'd ask when the two of us were alone in my car, the iPod playing through the car speakers, loud enough to vibrate the seats. "Hello, Dad," he'd yell through the music, as if I had asked the most moronic question. "It's Robert Plant. It's Led Zeppelin. Hello." There were times he tested me. "Who is this, Dad?" he'd say, certain I had no clue. "I think I've heard this before. It's Slipfoot." "Geez, Dad," he'd say, laughing. "It's Slipknot." Although the music selection on his iPod was quite eclectic, the heavy metal, that sound of music, was his favorite. Along with Slipknot, Lamb of God, and other metal gods, he called them. He listened to Johnny Cash and Frank Sinatra too, but there was no doubt metal was king. He even did a presentation in high school, a speech class on the history of metal music, one of the few presentations he actually completed. Now Graham wanted to go to a concert. "Dad, Atreyu is playing in the city." "Nope, don't think so." "Nope, grades are too bad, sorry." "Children of Bodom is playing in Milwaukee, only 3 hours away." "Still not on track. Plus, you're not going to a metal concert without some supervision." Well, that was the opening he needed. Supervision. "So you'd let me go to a concert, but only if you came with me?" I began to believe it might be a good idea to get Graham away from all that was troubling him. There is this concert coming up at the end of the summer. It's huge, 6 bands, and it's at an outdoor theater, and it's Slipknot. His big blue eyes grew softer, and he tilted his head to one side, looking so young. "Take a look at the date," I said. "Check the ticket prices, see what's available, and see if you can get some friends to go along. I'll think about it." I knew if the price wasn't outrageous, I was going to say yes. But I truly wasn't ready for a day-long metal concert with a group of teenage boys. We arrived 2 hours before the first band took the stage, and the parking lot was already filling up. "Does that guy have a swastika tattooed on the back of his neck?" I said to no one in particular. "Yeah, he does," said Jack, one of Graham's friends. "That's freaking sick." "Some of these people are wacky," Graham said, seemingly knowing what to expect and in many ways already accepting what he would witness. I came to the conclusion early on that most metal concert goers are people on the fringes. But I was also surprised to see what some would call normal people standing in line at the entrance gate. Dad, are those our neighbors? Graham asked, pointing toward a couple at the south end of the gate. They looked to be in their early 30s. Both wore Levi jeans. He was in a polo shirt. She wore some blouse from Ann Taylor. They looked like they were heading to Costco. Does that guy have a stud through the back of his neck? Graham's friend Corey asked. The teenager was shirtless with a shaved head, black jeans, and sandals. Graham didn't seem fazed by any of this, any of the spectacle. Dad, he said, you're not weirded out by all this, are you? I teach college, Graham. I see a lot of wacky clothes and styles. I'm good, really. I lied. I was just a little weirded out. Listening to this music was a workout. After each musical set, it was as if you had just finished a run at the gym. The driving force of the music, the intensity, the relentless throbbing set it apart from any concert I had seen before. And I wasn't completely prepared for these lyrics. There were plenty of and kills and hates. But to be fair, love was also in the mix. Even pray came up sometimes. So what do you think, Graham asked between the first and second bands of the day. Well, you know, Graham, I'm okay with this, I said, trying to find merit in it all. Wait until you see Slipknot. Oh my God. Graham put his arm around my shoulder and looked me in the eye. Now, I don't want you to be scared about this or anything. This was the Graham I knew. This was a boy who cared, had passion, and desperately wanted me to accept his music. Well, I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to be, Graham, I said. He smiled. Can we get something to eat? Graham asked. Here's $20, I said, handing him the cash, and he stuffed it in his front pocket of his jeans. No corn dogs, no funnel cakes, none of that stuff. Yeah, I got it, he said, jumping up and crawling over the seats in front of us, his buddies right alongside him. I sat alone at the stands, and Graham and his friends walked through the aisles and out to the food court, laughing and knocking into each other the way teenage boys do to show affection. One of them eyed a pretty girl. She appeared to be around 18 with shoulder-length blonde hair, wearing jean shorts and a Metallica t-shirt. All four of them stopped in their steps to watch her walk. Music, friends, girls. What more could four teenage boys want in an afternoon? There was one more band before the headliner. Wait till you see Slipknot in their masks. You know, they wear these masks. They are insane, Graham said, excitedly sharing a little insight into his favorite musicians. Some fans came to the concert wearing Slipknot masks. They always wear masks. They never show their faces, Graham said. Disturbed played next. That was the name of the band. And if I had to pick a favorite band of the night, it was these guys. The music was hard and it was powerful, but the lyrics, though dark and frequently raw, were deeper and more complex than the other bands. That song, Prayer, that's pretty good, Graham, I said in the relative calm between the end of the Disturbed set and the beginning of Slipknot's. It's about the singer's sister, you know, Graham said. She committed suicide and he reached out to God. How do you know this? I read, he said with a smirk. Well, when I was your age, Graham, I devoured Rolling Stone magazine, consuming every article about my favorite singers and bands. Did you know that Dylan, his song, It Ain't Me, Babe, that was written about Joan Baez? Did you know that Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's Our House is Graham Nash's love song to Joni Mitchell? I had suitcases of this stuff. Graham wasn't even listening. Slipknot finally came to the stage. The lead singer screamed it into the microphone. The crowd yelled back. Some kind of metal thing. Slipknot burst into its first song with the force of a bulldozer. Graham and his friends went directly into a hard banging mode, a head banging mode, stiffening their necks and flatly twirling their hair in circles. Graham's locks were long enough to hit me in the ear. The boys and the rest of the crowd were now on their feet, pumping their fists in the air and belting out song lyrics that I could neither understand nor hear over the sledgehammer guitars and the drums. I stood along with everyone else, but my eyes were not on the stage. They were on Graham. He was jumping to the beat of the music, his body moving to involuntary impulses. Graham, I yelled, trying to overcome the massive sound. Graham! I screamed again, grabbing his elbow. This is what you needed, isn't it? It didn't matter that Graham couldn't hear my question through the dense and rhythmic thump that surrounded us. All that mattered was the music. All the work we had to do as father and son would be hard, tedious, taxing, difficult, disappointing, frustrating. But it had all vanished temporarily that afternoon in the sharing of this mad music. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Great job. You should go on the radio. You got a great voice.
Welcome back, everybody, to Waterline Writers. I'd like to introduce Thomas Chalkley. He's a published haiku poet. After retiring from a career as an educator, Tom began writing haiku seriously in 2010. He has had haiku and haiku-related forms published in a wide variety of print journals, notably Modern Haiku, Frog Pond, and Bottle Rockets, and more recently in online journals such as Shamrock Haiku Journal, Cattails, Hairun Today, 100 Gourds, and World Haiku Review. I'd like to mention also that Tom is also a Knox grad. Tonight, Tom will be reading and showing 8 haiku triads. Thomas Chalkley.
I'm cheating. I'm only going to read 7. Haiku triad. I know you're all asking, what is a haiku triad? Well, you don't know because I made that term up. I'm going to be reading 3 pieces, and they're all on the same haiku. So one piece will be the haiku itself. The second piece is a piece of microfiction, 300-400 words, and the haiku. And then we'll be showing a visual collage, a slide with that same haiku. So there are 3 pieces in each of these triads, and they're independent, but they do have the same haiku. So here's the first one, the haiku. Prickly poppies. You're grumpy, I tell her, looking in the mirror. The story. It's called Toxic and a Cure for Cloudy Eyes. I'll call her Argemina Mexicana. Not a real name, of course. She had a shiny new doctorate and was new to high school administration. I was a dinosaur in my 30th year at the high school. She was my new boss. We were not friends. While we used the same English vocabulary, we talked past each other. For example, when she talked about a summer project for our counselor group, she meant shepherding incoming freshmen through a series of counseling activities in July and August. When I talked about shepherding incoming freshmen during the summer, I meant getting paid for non-contractual work. I knew I was in trouble in the second semester of our first year together. In explaining to our counselor group why I was wrong in my thinking, she inadvertently called me by her husband's name. It happened 3 times in 2 weeks. I knew that I had to change the evolving problem as quickly as possible. So I took to bringing a big blue cup with my name, Tom, in white letters. Whenever I commented at a group meeting, I casually held the cup up in front of me. She soon returned to using my name while pointing out my faulty thinking to my colleagues and myself. I often wondered if her husband had the reciprocal problem. Prickly poppies. You're grumpy, I tell her, looking in the mirror. The second triad, the haiku. Homecoming, our ship falling through the sky. Here's the story. It's called Remote Controls. I lose my game of solitaire and turn off the tablet. I'm going up and check the email, I tell her. She's occupied, bent over her tablet, playing her game, typing messages to her teammates. She mumbles, okay. It's mid-morning already. I still have no email. I move on to reading the news online. Things in Washington haven't changed since yesterday. At 1 o'clock, it's time to go for lunch. I look reflexively at the corner as I enter the kitchen. She's still there. Lunch, I ask? No response. She's typing a quick message to a teammate. It occupies her time. Homecoming, our ship falling through the sky. This is the third haiku triad, the haiku. Country roads, autumn field rows, return to mud. The story? It's called Road Songs. I had slipped around the guy blocking the left lane and passed 3 trucks in the right lane. Now, good driver that I am, I'm in the right lane again, but fast approaching another slower car ahead. I signaled to shift left. However, the left lane blocker has picked up speed and he's beside me. Exactly beside me. After a bit, I turn off my signal and slow to the speed of my friend ahead of me. I listen to Holly Williams singing her country and western hit, The Highway. Country roads, autumn field roads, return to mud. Here's the fourth triad, the haiku. Her wallpaper lips warm with his mandevilla smile. The story. It's called Research Study. Men's personality and women's perception of their dance quality. A study by Fink, Bernhardt et al. From the study abstract, dance movements were applied to a featureless virtual humanoid character and judged on their dance quality by 53 women. Hi, I'm Avatar 10, and I'm particularly proud of my 12-second dance routine. Of course, they programmed all of us to have excellent rhythm, but I like to think my enthusiasm shows through and the energy that I project into all my moves. My final one is killer. Arms wide, hips swiveling, I drop into a crouch and finish with a Travolta-esque pose. Still, I wish they had programmed the face with my smile. It's my most winning feature, I think. Her wallpaper lips, warm with his mandevilla smile. Here's the fifth triad, the haiku. Flood tide, a dog sends a wave of seagulls flying. The story, cloudy with an electric touch. Here's the question I've been wondering about. If AI bots, artificial intelligence robots, ventured into the visual arts, would they need to get drunk in order to create their masterworks? That's what the Chinese painter Chen Rong did when he created his scroll, 9 Dragons. Biographies relate that Chen invented his painting skills by getting drunk and dipping his hat in ink and smearing the ink on rice paper. So suppose that an AI bot has finished its daily round of steering the Google car through rush hour traffic and finds itself back home with some time to continue its cyber painting 9 birds. Would the AI bot need to binge drink electricity in order to splash an ocean of colors across the screen? Or would it simply drive itself to the beach for some sober inspiration? Flood tide. A dog sends a wave of seagulls flying. The sixth triad. Next time, a perfect circle. Smoke rings. Here's the story, called Imperfections. The glass bounces off the motel room wall, spraying brandy across the wallpaper and the wicker chair in the corner. It's practical proof. She tells me it shows me she is free of inhibitions, free of social conventions. It's the dramatic point that wins the argument in her mind. She's right. Still, I hold on to my glass, thinking about the cleaning staff and the mess they'll have the next day when they clean up. 2 years later, my daughter calls to tell me her mother has had a psychotic episode. Our son has coaxed her into the hospital for assessment. Now they know she has bipolar disorder. Next time, a perfect circle. Smoke rings. And the last one. The haiku. Who with whom last night? Owl crosstalk. The story is called January 4, 1959. I leaned in for a goodnight kiss. I'll clue you in about it. It's a flop of a date. For old time's sake, mostly. College freshmen back home on Christmas break. We decided to see the flick the night before we both left to go back to school. I was cool with that, but I was not cool with the way this date was playing out. It was a lot like our old high school dates. One more time just sitting in the dark. She was frosted. A friend of a friend had told her what I'd said about her. What did I say? To whom? I didn't go wait. I just cooled. I didn't need to play that game with her again. She couldn't tell me, of course, because she had been sworn to secrecy. We both knew that story at Cooties. She was cruising for a bruising. So I walked her to the back door. At least I thought I should get a kiss for the date and for the wasted makeout time. She said yes, and I leaned in for the kiss. Really grody. I only caught the side of her mouth, and I cut out as soon as I could. Who with whom last night? Owl crosstalk. Thank you.
Do you enjoy the variety of different voices and genres and styles of writing? I think it's fun. I wanted to just say a word about Water Street Studios. This is where we are tonight, Water Street Studios, and we're so lucky to have a beautiful facility like this in our area. 2 galleries, the main gallery, and there's another gallery upstairs with a exhibit dedicated to one particular writer, or artist, Georgia Schwender. There are also 28 artist studios in the building, 3D studios downstairs through that door, and there are 2D studios for painters and photographers upstairs. They host classes for children and adults. There are class brochures back at the desk. And I wanted to point out we now have 2 writing classes that are included in this book. My class that Kevin mentioned earlier, galleries are for writers too. We have a lot of fun in that class. It's really interesting, but so far not a lot of people coming to it. So please consider coming.
It's really great.
It's really fun. And part of the time is just, we do talk a lot about the art and different aspects of the pieces that can give us like ideas about how to look at our own writing differently. So we don't just get inspiration from a piece, but we talk about its structure, its use of light and color. It's just kind of endless things we find in them. And it's especially interesting to me to find that one of the pieces in this current art show is a series of lists. I don't know if you can, our TV audience can see this, but a series of lists that have all been completely crossed out. As a writer, that was very interesting. And then the other class in here is Take My Word For It, which is Trish Credell still here? Well, hopefully you got to talk to her during the break, but we're very excited that we're going to be able to start offering these classes for children here. I want to introduce our last reader. I'm actually going to introduce 2 people. Ramesh Shah is Chief Quality Officer at FONA International, or FONA, FONA International, a leading food flavor manufacturer. His goal is to bring amicable resolution to every customer dissatisfaction. His journey from the back streets of Bombay, now Mumbai, to this position is described in his soon-to-be-published memoir, Tomorrow Will Be a Better Day, ghostwritten by his good friend, Richard Graves. Richard is a member of the St. Charles Writers Group and performs at local open mics. In 2013, he hosted Project Publish, a BATV reality show for writers and performers. Richard grew up in England, studied engineering, and worked in 4 countries before settling in the Fox Valley. Richard, do you want to come up first? And, or you can come up together. And
Thank you, Anne. Okay, first I'd like to start off with an announcement. It was mentioned there, Project Publish. We did that in 2013. A TV show, a reality show, where we paired writers and performers together and let them perform live, given a writing challenge to see what they did, and then we had judges who voted one off, and we went from 7 down to 6, down to 5, down to 4, down to 3, down to a final, and we ended up with the winners of that competition. Now, I was hosting that, and Kim Kozar at the time now, hold on, I don't get this right, Kim Lascelius, yes? And then so we did follow up immediately because Kim decided to do things like get married and change job and move house, and recently she's come to her senses and said, yes, we need to do another series of Project Publish. So we're looking to do that, and more information on that will come in future weeks or months. So, my introduction also talked about engineering. I came to the US. You can tell I'm not from here. I come from England. I grew up in England. I came as an engineer, and I worked for a multinational company, and I came to manage a project. And we settled in Minnesota, and I was going to extend a factory, make it larger, and we were going to close down a plant in Sarasota in Florida and move the production into that new location I was constructing. The company was also building a business center here in the Chicago area for the States, and some of the people that worked down there were going to move there, and other people from around the country were going to come there. So I did that, and I met for the first time a microbiologist at this company, a relatively small company in Sarasota named Ramesh Shah. Well, at the end of that 2-year project, they offered me a job, a regional job, to stay here in the US, and that's why I'm here. And so I was doing that job, and in that role, I worked alongside Ramesh for several years. So then, fast forward 10 years, I'm then a consulting engineer, and I arrive at the doorstep of the new company where Ramesh is working, and I hear he's trying to write his memoir. And that's because his son-in-law, who's here, Jonathan, was saying, hey, you need to write your stories down. You've got some great stories. I want my kids to know them when they grow up. You've got to write it down. You've got to write it down. And so Ramesh had tried doing that. Now, as writers, we all know the importance of being critiqued, right? Yes? Yes. So his son-in-law, Ramesh sort of started writing his memoir. His son-in-law did him the honor of looking him straight in the eye and saying, Dad, this is boring. So I happened to meet Ramesh again after many years, shortly after that, and we got talking, and I said, look, you're writing it, you've written it like a technical report, because that's what you've been trained to do. And so we talked about that, and I said, look, instead of, you've got to tell the story by showing the scene. You've got to create the scenes and put the people, the reader, in those scenes. They've got to feel like they're there in the back streets of Bombay. And so we've got to, I think it's a great book. So here's Ramesh, come along, and he's going to read the first chapter. Thanks.
Thank you. I would like to say thank you. Thanks all of you for coming here. And mainly I'd like to say thanks to Anne and Kevin for inviting and say, hey, you can come here and present your first chapter. Before I do that, I just want to show you the book is not published yet because it's at the WordPress. But this is what the title looks like. It's an immigrant's memoir. Now, tell me more about an immigrant. I'm sure a lot of you people know
some immigrant, or you for yourself, an immigrant, or your parents came from different countries. So this is a book, and the title is Tomorrow Will Be a Better Day. This title, my father kept talking to us for years and years. This was the hope that we lived in. When you are deep into a poverty back in India, when I left India, it was 400 million people. And when you are deep in a poverty that you are worrying about a next day where the half a cup of milk is going to come. But when he kept reminding you, son, be an optimist, because tomorrow is going to be a better day. And honestly, so true. My life, I said, my God, tomorrow is definitely a better day. And turns out to be a fabulous day for me, because then I'm so optimistic. I'm married, my wife Meena is here, we've been married for 43 years. And that's a long time, but you know, I tell those people that I was married when I was 12. I have 2 grown-up children here, and both of them are living one is in Naperville, and one is downtown Chicago. And here's my fabulous son-in-law for my older daughter, Jonathan. And as Richard said, he was very instrumental in kept telling me, Dad, write your story. Because when you are growing up in India, when your pocket is completely empty, you are 9 brothers and sisters, and father and son, and you have no money because people are yelling at you. They want to get a hold of you because you haven't paid milk money or any money, and you are trying to make a good living, honest living, but there is no money. So when the life is tough like this, you know, I always say, Lord, thank you for giving me those days, because that made me who I am today. And that's what I wanted to put it in the writing. So I graduated, after borrowing a lot of money, graduated from BS in microbiology, honors degree, and I said, you know, now Mom, don't worry. Meanwhile, father had passed away at the age of 50, so there is no bread earner. And I said, Mom, don't worry, we'll be fine, because Dad said tomorrow is going to be a better day. Anyhow, graduated with the honors degree, and I'm very pleased to say I'm going to get a job, we'll have no problem. India at that time, 25% unemployment. And to get a job, you have to know somebody. You have to know somebody to get a job. And when you are poor, there is no connection. You're not going to find a job. Anyhow, landed in USA, and life started unbelievable. As you are an immigrant, when I talk to a white man, they never understood me. When I talk to African American, they never understood. I never understood anybody. I mean, it was truly a disaster. I mean, I said, what the heck am I doing here? But after 47 years, I'm doing well. Now, so let me read a chapter 1 that is going to be in the book. This is the place in Mumbai. Now, when I was growing up, it was known as the Bombay. And year was 1955. I was 10 years old. Can I bring it down a little so you can hear me, please? Oh, that's maybe better. Yes, thank you. Thank you, you should have told me earlier. This is in Mumbai. I'm 1955, I'm 10 years old. And Old Hanuman Lane, this is the apartment we are now living in. So I'm describing in this chapter an apartment that I live in Bombay. I walked to a rat scratching the floor inches from my head. I glanced up and made a shooing noise that sent it dashing past Hasubai, my older brother, who lay on the bed mat next to me. Rats and house lizards were regular visitors to our one-bedroom apartment, entering through the cracks and opening in a rundown tenement building. As followers of a Jain religion, which is a part of a Hindu religion, but it's a purified branch of Hinduism called Jainism. As a followers of a Jain religion, we believed in non-violence to all creatures that did no harm to rodents or any other life form that came into contact with us. We had no pesticide. It cannot do it because that is against the law, against the religious law. Beyond Hasubai lay 4 other siblings, my second oldest brother Bhupat and 3 sisters. Our parents and baby Rashmi slept in a small kitchen area beyond a partition my dad had constructed for privacy. We kept the window above my bed open at night to cool our 3rd floor apartment. And from my bedmat, I could see a small section of the night sky. Sometime I would gaze at the stars and wonder if they would align kindly for me at the important moments of my life. We the astrology played a very important role in Indian beliefs. When I got married, astrologer has to give a green signal before you can even marry. So that is a so important part of our life. Monsoon season had come early that day, and there were no stars that night. Instead, I listened to a periodic blink of a drop of water leaking from a ceiling, landing in one of several pans distributed around the room to catch the drips. Our apartment was located at the end of the tenement building, beneath the angled roof that caught the worst of the storm. In a monsoon season, mildew discolored the walls. Washcloth hung dry, never dried completely. The room was always miserable. A sewer smell drifted through the window from the toilet located next to our apartment, used by all the residents on our floor. I turned to face the other way. At least that my ear did not hurt that morning, and my allergy were not bothering me. I frequently had an infection in my left ear, and that would wake up with a severe pain. I was not a healthy child. Bhupat had a bigger problem. The second brother had a bigger problem. He had a contracted polio at age of 3 and needed a constant medical help. He had a weak legs and a hunchback. We teased him about being a favorite son because he had a special shoes to help him walk while the rest of us only had a simple flip-flop. When he was young, Mom and other siblings fed him, bathed him, and carried him wherever he needed to go. Now at age 16, Bhupat weighed around 90 pounds and managed to get most places on his own. We slept on a cotton bed mat, 1 to 2 inches thick. The girls wore cotton nightgowns, and boys wore an undershirt, loose cotton trousers called lenga. Each morning, when Mom woke us, we would clear away the bed mats and stack them in one corner of the room. In the evening, we would return the living space to a sleeping quarters, laying out the bed mats beneath the washcloth hung dry. The total space was less than 400 square feet. That included kitchen. I pulled my knee tight to my chest to control my hunger pain. Soon Mom would make a tea with 3 parts of water and 1 part of milk. That's all the milk we could get. And we would eat spicy snack. Before going to school, we were pure vegetarian, which meant we had milk, cheese, and butter, but no eggs. The cheese and butter were expensive, and we rarely had them. When we did, the portions were very small. Mostly we ate wheat chapatis, like a tortillas, vegetables, rice, and watery buttermilk. I loved the taste of milk, and sometimes I daydream of having a full glass of milk just to myself. Every day, Dad would arrive home, having used money he had earned to pay off a debt. When he left, what he had left wouldn't cover our daily expense. So the next day he would borrow again just to keep us afloat. Most evening my parents discussed which debt should be paid next to maintain a reputation of honesty and integrity. The whole family joined in conversation. Sometimes I searched the pocket of every piece of clothing in the apartment for a coin or 2 that might help the situation. Often my brother and I took a detour on walking to the school to avoid the shouts about unpaid bills from vegetable vendors, milkmen, and grain owners. Whenever we became discouraged, my dad would put his arm on my hand and say, "Son, tomorrow will be a better day. Just keep your faith." In our sector of Bombay, businesses, warehouses, and tenement buildings mingled together, and it was not unusual for a rich and poor to live on a side by side. The very rich lived further south, and 2 miles away, the river Miti flowed through the city center and formed the arc known as the necklace of Queen of England. The river was flowing into the Arabian Sea, and you can see a beautiful arc at the Bombay Bay that we used to call, and even English people call it necklace of Queen of England. Something I would Some mornings, I would sneak upstairs to Mr. Vakil's apartment on the 4th floor. He was the wealthiest tenant and had 2 newspapers delivered every morning. He was a kind man and would give me the paper when he would finish with them, but I needed to read the cricket news before I went to school. Then I could join in conversation with my schoolmates and who had listened to the radio commentary about cricket. We could not afford a radio, so I did not want my friends to know that we had no radio. We all worked hard to keep our poverty within the 4 walls of apartment. When the mango season came, my school friends would talk about how great the mango they had the night before. I would nod my head and say, yes, it was a nice mango, but I had no mango until the season was over, when the quality and the prices had dropped. Family reputation impacted every aspect of life. It defined the social status, how people treated us, who will marry, who will find the job opportunities. With a few exceptions, rich people married the rich people, and their children always got the best job. Time to get up. Quickly now, Mom's voice rang out. The water tap will be closed down within 40 minutes. Fetching water each morning was one of our childhood chores. The tenement building only had a 1 water supply, a single faucet outside the building entrance on the basement. A Mom's call, we all got up, stacked our bedding, and closed the window to suppress the growing sewer smell. The Dad had already washed and was ready to go to work. My sister, Damuben, fetched bucket from the kitchen, and together we headed the door to fetch more water for the house. When we returned, we had an 18-gallon of water tank in the house, and each person got 2 to 3 gallons of water for bathing. We bathed, cleaned clothes, washed dishes, and a 3-foot by 3-foot cement pad inside the kitchen. Next to the cement pad, there was a small clay stove, about a 12 inch by 10 inches, with a small opening in the side to collect the ashes. Mom would place charcoal in the base, pour the kerosene, and light the charcoal with a match. The kitchen had no ventilation and always was smoky and a damp atmosphere. For drinking water, we poured city water through a double layer of cheesecloth and collected it in a clay pot that had a small copper faucet on the side. The cheesecloth collected some small insects, dirt, and other debris. Someday, we would even find a small worm up to ½ an inch length, and Mom would sacrifice some precious charcoal to boil the water so we can drink it. The girls bathed first, then came the turn for the boys. While I waited for my turn, I filled a small tin container with the water and joined the line of the people outside the door, waiting for the toilet use. There was one toilet for 30 people that lived on the floor. A waste pipe ran along the side wall of the building into a downspout that fed a collection of pit in a ground level. Untouchables came daily to remove the solid waste from the pit. In a monsoon season, the big storm would sometimes overload the city drainage system, and storm water would flow through the collection pit and turn the street into a river of contaminated mud brown water. Back in the apartment, my sister had finished bathing. I fetched the clothes that I would wear that day, filled a small bucket with the water, removed my night clothes, and stepped into the cement pad. Beside me, Mom tended the stove. I splashed the water on my face and torso, rubbed my skin with a hard soap, and rinsed off shivering when the cold water hit my spine. Then I dried off with a thin cotton towel already used by one of my siblings. A random thought entered my head. I squeezed out the towel. Maybe one day we would own a radio, have a towel each, and I could drink a full glass of milk every morning. I smiled. I smile at the impossibility, but I have to believe that tomorrow will be a better day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you. Okay, a few announcements. On Thursday, November 20th, there's an event called Lit by the Bridge with Paul Latour. It's held at Culture Stock, which is in, not Geneva, in Aurora on Galena Boulevard. It's across the river from the Paramount. And on November 20th, our featured writer is none other than our own Ann Vacu. Our next Waterline event is December 21st, and the one after that is January 18th. Put it on your calendar right this minute. I want to see you take your phones out and do that. I'd like to thank all of our writers, David Berner, Thomas Chockley, Joan Colby, Richard Graves, John Manis, and Ramesh Shah. I'd like to thank all our volunteers, Mary McHugh, Frank Rutledge, Barbara Barrows, Nick Markavicius, Ginny Klespitz, Paula Garrett, Kristen Latour, and Brandon Fink. I'd like to thank Water Street Studios for letting us use this gorgeous location, but most importantly, I'd like to thank all of you. We really do appreciate you showing up tonight. Thank you